In the context of Southeast Asia, in the context of the Indian Ocean, is there any analogy that you can pull out from your single species management example where there is no single species, effective single species management in a lot of those places? How does that change the picture of the fine-tuning you're painting?
Well, that's a really good question, because basically most of the rest of the world is not going, the glib answer would be say, well, they got to get the single species management right. But in fact, they don't have those structures, okay? They are not going, India is not going to have fisheries management councils that do surveys and stuff like that. So I think the answer in a lot of places is smaller scale, community-based management. That if you take the Bob Johannes kind of things, and a lot of the Chileans, and there's a lot of Mexican cooperatives that are doing various things that might be called ecosystem-based management, certainly in the broadest sense, by devolution of fisheries authority to smaller groups. I think that certainly the meetings I've been with people from India, that's what they look to as their way of fisheries management in general. Is it's going to be small, community-based, and it's going to not going to be single species quoted or anything like that. They're going to institute a whole series of regulations that give them pretty good results for their ecosystem as a whole. But no, I don't think there's any chance that most of the rest of the world, at least the non-industrial, the big industrial fisheries of Peru, et cetera, are basically on the western track. Okay? They do have the resources, but for the smaller scale fisheries of the world, it's not going to happen. And totally different kinds of approaches are needed to everything. And moving through the Western example of single species management is not the track.
Hey, it's kind of turning Andre's question upside down in a sense. Is that you made a point here that we, maybe 20% of the stocks in the U.S. are overfished, and there's a much higher percentage of stocks that are recovering that are declining, and we may be losing in some cases 10, 15, 20% to maximum sustainable yield. In some cases, much less. And Andre suggested that we perceive us being a long ways away from ecosystem-based management. Well, who perceives us being a long ways away? Is it the people that really know the real success of fisheries management? And if that's, and why do they perceive it as being that far away, given the statistics that you just showed us? I mean, who and why thinks we've done this is an abject failure, right? Given what you talked about.
Right. Well, I mean, on one hand, you could say it has been the gloom and doomsayers who there's sort of an industry of saying fisheries management has failed. On the other hand, it could be, I guess it was George's comment that people who care about individual birds and mammals, there'd be a whole host of different perceptions about how well we've done at it, and I think very clearly yield is an important indicator, and one that I think most legislators who pass laws, whether in California or in Washington, would be surprised at how well we've done on that front, because for some reason NOAA has traditionally, I don't know, Richard, they were going to do it again this year, has not actually calculated that metric. So I don't think many people appreciate how well we do on that metric. But there's just a lot of other metrics out there that are important to different parts of society, and 30 years ago they didn't count. Well, they count now. They're at the table, and there's no way around it. We got to live with a very complicated, multi-objective world. And I haven't even talked about recreational commercial.
Is it that much easier to sell gloom and doom than it is?
You ever heard of a newspaper? How many times have you read a newspaper that's it?
No, I'm not. It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, it's clearly a rhetorical question.
Great, line of questions, but we gotta get ready to the airport.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's thank Ray again for.
Don't forget your computer, Ray. Or you want to say some last words to your conference today? Sure, yeah, okay, let me in.
Don't leave yet. Hey, we're not done yet.
Not quite over, if you could just...
A couple quick announcements and thoughts and thank yous we'd like to say. First of all, a logistic one for the presenters. There's some interest in maybe reconvening briefly to go over what the different groups had thought of and maybe reconstructing those. I think it's a really good idea. So for those presenters who would like to participate in that, I propose we just try to meet ad hoc in the lobby, say in 15 minutes or so, and we can rethink the things we were going over earlier today. Another thing I also want to do is yesterday we acknowledged and gave a bit of the history of the Bevan endowment. I'm pleased to see that Tanya Bevan was able to come forward with this afternoon, so if Tanya can wave. And we can all thank Tanya again for her generous support. And I also wanted to thank all the presenters for providing just a really tremendous, comprehensive view of really exactly what we're hoping for as an ecosystem-based management on the ground. I think we saw a really great cross-section of what's happening. So one more thanks for everybody. And then the last thank you is probably the most important thank you. Many of you probably noticed this has been an extremely well-organized event, and that's not because of me or Andre, that's because of Megan, who's just been fantastic at running this. So thank you very much, Megan. Is there anything else?
I think there's beer at the pub.
Yeah, if you find a pub and there's beer, and you can drink that. So thank you everyone for participating.